Father pretended to be paralyzed in a coma at the hospital until he heard his son tell the truth. Frank Miller had been awake for 2 hours when he heard his son's voice in the hallway talking on the phone with someone. What he heard made his heart race faster than any cardiac issue that had brought him there. "When my father passes, I'll finally be free," Jason whispered, thinking no one could hear him. The words cut Frank like a blade, decades of hard work to build a legacy for his son. And this was what he thought. Frank clenched his eyes shut and made a decision that would change everything between them. When Jason entered the room a few minutes later, he found his father exactly as he had been since the heart surgery. Motionless, eyes closed, seemingly in a vegetative state. "Dad?" Jason approached the bed, his voice heavy with a sadness Frank hadn't expected. "The doctors said you might still hear me." Frank kept his breathing steady, every muscle in his body tense. Jason pulled the chair closer and held his father's hand. The touch was gentle, full of affection. "I don't know if you'll wake up, but I'm sorry for everything that happened before the surgery, for all the arguments, for making you upset." Confusion filled Frank's mind. Jason didn't sound like someone eager to be rid of him. On the contrary, his trembling voice betrayed deep sorrow. "Dr. Parker said stress caused the heart attack. And I know most of that stress came from our fights," Jason continued, squeezing his father's hand. "If you don't wake up, I'll never forgive myself." Frank wanted to open his eyes right then, hug his son, and say everything would be okay. But the words he'd heard in the hallway still echoed in his mind. He decided to keep pretending to understand what was really happening. Jason stayed for 2 more hours, talking about childhood memories, their mother who had passed 5 years ago, and how he missed the conversations they used to have before business took over their lives. Frank felt tears welling up, but kept them at bay. The next day, Jason returned with Rebecca, the wealthy cousin Frank had never fully trusted. "Jason, you need to be practical," Rebecca said as they entered the room. "The doctors were clear. Your father could stay like this for months, maybe years. You can't put your life on hold for this." "He's my father, Rebecca. I won't abandon him." "No one's talking about abandonment. I'm saying we should transfer him to a specialized clinic in New York, a place where he'll get proper care and you can move forward." Frank's blood boiled. He'd always suspected Rebecca had ulterior motives, but he never imagined she'd be so brazen. "I'm not moving my father anywhere," Jason said firmly. "He stays here in Pittsburgh, where he was born, where he built everything he has. And how will you cover the costs? The company's struggling, Jason. There's no use pretending otherwise." Jason fell silent. Frank sensed the tension in his son's grip. "What struggles were these?" "I'll figure it out," Jason murmured. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. "Jason, you're 28. You can't waste your youth taking care of someone who might never wake up," Rebecca pressed. "Look, I have connections in New York. I can get him into an excellent clinic, and I'll even help with the initial costs." "In exchange for what?" Frank's heart pounded. Rebecca was definitely scheming something. "Oh, nothing. We're family. But it would be interesting if you gave me power of attorney to help with the business while you get back on your feet. Just temporarily, of course." "I don't need it, Rebecca. I can handle the company and my father." "Can you?" "Jason, you've lost 3 major contracts this past month. The employees are worried. Clients are looking elsewhere. You need help." Jason let go of his father's hand, and Frank immediately missed the touch. "I said I don't need your help," Jason repeated, but his voice was less firm. Rebecca sighed dramatically. "Fine, but when you change your mind, call me. And Jason, think about what's best for your father too. He wouldn't want to be a burden on your life." After Rebecca left, Jason stayed there in silence for another hour. Frank could feel his son's inner conflict, the tension radiating from his body. "Dad, I don't know what to do," Jason finally whispered. "The company is really in bad shape, really bad. And I don't have your experience. I don't know how to fix this." Frank wanted to shout that they'd figure it out together, that there was no problem they couldn't face as a team, but he stayed still. "The worst part is, I hid it from you before the surgery. I didn't want to worry you, but I think you suspected something. That's why we fought so much that last week." Jason was right. Frank had noticed inconsistencies in the reports, some accounts that didn't add up. But he'd planned to talk to his son after the post-surgery recovery period. "I thought I'd have time to fix everything before you found out, but then the heart attack happened and—" Jason swallowed a sob. "And now I don't know if you'll wake up to scold me or forgive me." That night, Frank lay awake thinking about everything he'd heard. The words his son had said on the phone started making more sense. Maybe Jason wasn't talking about his death, but about the freedom to admit his mistakes without disappointing him. The next morning, Nurse Margaret came in to check his vitals. She was a woman in her 50s, experienced, someone Frank had noticed from day one. She always looked at him differently, as if she knew something. "Good morning, Mr. Frank," she said softly, checking the IV. "Your son came in early today. He's in the cafeteria having coffee." Frank kept his eyes closed, but Margaret kept talking. "You know, in 30 years on the job, I've seen a lot. I've cared for patients in real comas, and I've seen some who were just pretending." Frank's heart raced, but he didn't move. "Don't worry. I won't tell anyone," Margaret whispered, adjusting his pillow. "But if you're doing this for a reason, I hope it's a good one. That boy is suffering terribly." Frank wanted to open his eyes and explain everything to her, but he couldn't. Not yet. "I'll just say one thing," Margaret continued. "Last night, he came here at 2 in the morning. Said he couldn't sleep. Sat right there in that chair holding your hand and crying. Cried for over an hour." After Margaret left, Frank fought the urge to give up the charade. He was causing his son as much pain as he was feeling himself. Jason returned an hour later, bringing the smell of coffee and sugar rolls from the hospital cafeteria. Frank had always loved that morning scent. "Dad, I got coffee for myself, but then I remembered you always had yours at 7 on the dot," Jason said, pulling up the chair. "Remember when I was little and Mum would get mad because you never ate breakfast properly, always rushing to the office?" Frank remembered perfectly. Diane always said he'd have health problems if he didn't take better care of himself. Ironically, she was the first to go. "I've been thinking a lot about Mom these days. I think she'd be really sad to see us like this, you lying in this bed and me messing up everything you built." Jason paused to sip his coffee, and Frank noticed his son's hand trembling slightly. "You know what hurts me the most, Dad? I always wanted to work with you, but I was afraid. Afraid I wouldn't be good." Finish the sentence, Rebecca. Frank realized that Jason was starting to understand his cousin's true intentions. "Nothing, dear. I just think you should accept help during this difficult time." "The only help I need is for you all to leave this room," Jason replied firmly. "My father isn't dead, and as long as I'm alive, no one will make decisions for him without my consent." The attorney exchanged a glance with Rebecca. "Young man, I understand your position, but sometimes emotions—" "There are no emotions here," Jason interrupted. "Only facts. My father is alive. I'm his only son, and I won't let opportunists take advantage of his situation." Rebecca flushed with anger. "Opportunists? Jason, how dare you? How dare I?" "Rebecca, you showed up here 2 days after my father's surgery with proposals to move him away and take over his business. If that's not taking advantage, I don't know what is." The attorney tucked the papers back into his briefcase. "Well, if that's your stance, we'll respect it for now. But know there are other legal ways to protect the assets of an incapacitated person. My father isn't incapacitated. He's recovering." After the two left, Jason locked the door and approached the bed. "Dad, I know you might not hear me, but I need you to know I'll never let anyone take advantage of you. Never." Jason gripped his father's hand tightly. "And about the company, I'll fix everything. I don't know how yet, but I will. Even if I have to work day and night, even if I have to sell everything I own. I'll give you back the company just as you left it." Frank felt a wave of pride swell in his chest. The son he thought wanted nothing to do with him was willing to sacrifice everything to protect him and honor his legacy. "Eddie from accounting showed me some reports yesterday. The situation's bad, Dad, but not hopeless. If I can renegotiate some payments and maybe secure smaller contracts to rebuild cash flow, Jason shifted from sorrow to determination, and Frank could see that beneath the fear and uncertainty was a capable man ready to fight. "Remember when I was little and said I wanted to be just like you when I grew up? Well, now I have the chance to prove it. Only, I wish you were awake to guide me." That night, Frank nearly gave up the charade several times. With every passing hour, he felt guiltier for causing his son so much pain. But at the same time, he was learning more about Jason in a few days than he had in years of living together. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, continuing. On the 5th day, Jason arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. Frank could tell by the sound of his footsteps that he was agitated. "Dad, something happened yesterday you won't believe," Jason said, pulling the chair closer to the bed. Rebecca went to the office, said she wanted to help with some pending contracts. Frank tried to keep his breathing steady, but he was anxious to hear what happened. "Eddie thought it was odd and refused to show her anything without my approval, but he kept an eye on her and saw when she tried to access your computer. Luckily, you've always been paranoid about passwords, huh?" Jason let out a bitter laugh. "When I got there, she was furious, said I was being immature for refusing her help. But Dad, the way she looked at me when I said I wouldn't transfer you to New York, it was pure hatred." Frank had always doubted Rebecca's intentions, but he never imagined she'd be so brazen. But before he could put the plan into action, the next morning Rebecca returned to the hospital, accompanied by 2 people Frank didn't recognize. "Jason, this is Dr. Sarah, a psychologist specializing in family matters, and Attorney Bennett, another lawyer," Rebecca announced. Jason slowly rose from his chair. "Rebecca, what is this?" "Sweetheart, it's an intervention. We're all worried about you." The psychologist stepped forward. "Jason, your cousin told us about your situation. We know you're under a lot of stress, making big decisions alone, and that's not healthy." "Big decisions like what?" "Like selling your house, for example," the attorney replied. "Your cousin found out you listed the apartment for sale. That's a clear sign you're not emotionally fit to make rational choices." Frank felt his anger rising. Rebecca was watching Jason's every move. "My house, my decisions," Jason said curtly. "Jason, honey, you can't throw your life away over a situation that may never resolve itself," Rebecca said in a syrupy voice. "Your father could stay like this for years. Are you going to throw everything away?" "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm saving my father's company." The psychologist moved closer. "Jason, we understand your loyalty, but sometimes love means accepting reality. Your father won't be the same even if he wakes up. You need to think about your future." "My future is tied to his," Jason replied firmly. The attorney opened a folder. "Jason, we've brought some options to help you exit this situation with dignity. An investor is interested in buying your father's share of the company. With the offered amount, you could pay off all debts and still have a substantial sum to start fresh." "What investor?" Rebecca and the attorney exchanged a glance. "Well, actually, it's me," Rebecca confessed. "I have the capital and experience to run the business. You'd be free to live your life, and when your father wakes up, he'll understand it was the best decision." Frank nearly sat up in bed at that moment. Rebecca was trying to buy the company for a fraction of its worth. "You're out of your mind if you think I'd sell my father's company to you," Jason said, his voice thick with indignation. "Jason, be reasonable. The company is on the brink of bankruptcy. You admitted yourself you've lost major contracts. In 6 months, if this continues, there'll be nothing left to sell. Then let there be nothing left. But as long as I can fight, I will." The psychologist intervened again. "Jason, this is pride, not love. You're clinging to the fantasy that you can save everything alone. But look around. Your father is in a vegetative state. The company is failing. You're selling your home. That's not heroic. It's self-destructive." Jason walked to the bed and took his father's hand. "You know what's self-destructive? Giving up on the people we love. Accepting help from those who only want to take advantage. Selling a lifetime's work out of fear of fighting." He turned to face the 3 of them. "My father built this company from nothing. When he married my mother, they lived in a 2-room house with a 1975 Beetle as their only asset. He worked 16-hour days for 20 years to build what he has today. And you think I'll hand it all over because I hit a few obstacles? Rebecca was growing impatient. Jason, you're not your father. You don't have his experience, his strength. You're right, Jason interrupted. I'm not my father, but I am his son. And one thing I've learned watching him all these years is that family protects each other. Family doesn't abandon. Family doesn't sell each other's legacy to the first opportunist who comes along. The attorney tried once more. Jason, think financially. Rebecca's offer is generous considering the circumstances. Circumstances she's trying to create herself, Jason cut in. Do you all think I'm an idiot? First, she tries to convince me to move my father far away. Then she shows up with guardianship papers. Now she comes with a buyout offer for the company right when she knows I'm struggling. Is that a coincidence? Frank felt immense pride in his son. Jason was seeing right through Rebecca's manipulations. Besides, Jason continued, how did she know I put the house up for sale? I didn't tell anyone in the family. The only explanation is that she's watching me. Rebecca flushed. I have contacts at the real estate agency. It was just a coincidence. How convenient, Jason mocked. Well, since you've all come here, I'll be clear. I'm not selling the company. I'm not moving my father. I won't accept guardianship, and I won't take Rebecca's help. Now please leave my father's room. Jason, you'll regret this decision, Rebecca said, her mask of family concern finally slipping. Maybe, but I'd rather regret fighting than regret giving up. After the three of them left, Jason locked the door and leaned against it for a moment. Dad, I hope you heard that. I hope you know I'll never give up on you or the company, even if everyone thinks I'm crazy. Jason returned to the chair, but sat farther from the bed this time. You know, Dad, there's something I never told you. When I was a teenager, I used to listen to you and Mom talking at night about business. I pretended to be asleep, but I stayed awake listening. Frank remembered those conversations. Diane had always advised him on tough decisions. She was his closest confidant. One day, you were really worried because a big client had cancelled a contract. It was a lot of money and you didn't know how you'd pay the employees by the end of the month. Jason stood and walked to the window. Mom said something I've never forgotten. She said, Frank, the difference between winners and losers in life isn't never falling down. It's getting back up after you fall. And you said, but what if I can't get back up? And she said, you will, because you have a family who believes in you. And more importantly, you believe it's worth fighting for the people you love. Jason moved closer to the bed. Today I understand what Mom meant. It doesn't matter if I can save the company or not. What matters is that I'll try, because you're worth it. Because everything you built is worth it. That night, Frank made his final decision. The next day he would wake up. He couldn't stand seeing Jason fighting alone, making sacrifices, facing Rebecca's pressure any longer. It was time to stand by his son and face their problems together. But fate had other plans. In the early hours, Jason returned to the hospital. Frank heard his footsteps in the hallway and pretended to still be asleep. But when Jason entered the room, something was different. His steps were slower, heavier. Dad, something happened today that changed everything, Jason said, his voice carrying a sadness Frank hadn't heard before. Jason sat in the chair and was silent for a few minutes. Eddie found something in the company files, something Rebecca did months ago, when she visited the office while you were traveling to New York. Frank remembered the trip. He'd gone to a construction trade show and was away for a week. Dad, she tampered with the contracts I lost. Eddie found emails in the system showing she contacted the clients and sabotaged the proposals. Frank felt like he'd been punched in the gut. In the Davidson construction contract, she sent an email pretending to be me, saying we didn't have the technical capability to complete the project on time. For the city contract, she called the person in charge directly and claimed our company was having financial problems. Jason buried his face in his hands. Dad, I didn't lose those contracts because I was incompetent. I was sabotaged by our own family. And the worst part is, all these days I've been blaming myself, thinking I was a failure, that I was destroying everything you built. Frank Miller wanted to get up immediately, hug his son, and tell him everything would be okay. Rebecca had crossed every line. Eddie said he's gathering all the evidence, emails, call records, everything. He thinks we can sue her for sabotage and even recover the losses we suffered because of it. Jason lifted his head and looked at his father. But Dad, I don't know if I want to do that. Taking Rebecca to court would mean exposing the whole family, creating a scandal, spending money we don't have on lawyers, and in the end, even if we won, she might not have the means to pay. Frank admired his son's maturity, but at the same time wanted him to understand that Rebecca needed to be confronted. On the other hand, if I do nothing, she'll keep trying to hurt us. Just today, she tried to convince the bank to cancel our line of credit. She told them we were a failing business and that they were taking a risk. Jason stood abruptly. Dad, I'm tired. Tired of fighting someone from my own family. Tired of constantly having to prove I'm capable. Tired of seeing you in this bed, unable to do anything. For the first time since the charade began, Frank saw Jason truly break down. Sometimes I wonder if it wouldn't be easier to just accept her offer, sell everything, take the money, and start over somewhere else. At least then we'd be free of her for good. Frank wanted to shout no, that this wasn't the answer, but Jason continued. But then I look at you and remember everything you've always taught me. That family is sacred, that a man keeps his word, that a real man doesn't run from a fight. And I get confused, Dad, because how do you do the right thing when the person trying to destroy us is our own family? Jason sat back down and took his father's hand. Dad, I'm going to make a decision tomorrow. I'll confront Rebecca with the evidence Eddie found. I'll give her one last chance to stop and walk away peacefully. If she accepts, we'll drop it. If she doesn't, well, then I'll do what you would do in my place. Frank desperately wanted to advise his son, but he knew Jason was making the right choices. And Dad, no matter what happens tomorrow with Rebecca, I want you to know one thing. These days, taking care of you, fighting to save the company, facing all these struggles, they've been the days I've felt proudest to be your son. Jason squeezed his father's hand, because for the first time in my life, I understood what it truly means to love someone. It's not just standing by when things are easy, it's fighting, sacrificing, refusing to give up even when everyone says you should. Frank felt a tear roll down his face. He tried to wipe it away quickly, but Jason saw. Dad? Jason stood quickly. Dad, are you crying? Frank kept his eyes closed, trying to steady his breathing. Dad, I know you can hear me, Jason said, his voice thick with emotion. The tears. You cried when I said I was proud to be your son. Frank wanted to open his eyes right then, but something held him back. Dad, if you can hear me, if you're in there fighting to come back, please, keep fighting. I need you. Not to solve the problems for me, but for us to stand together and work through everything side by side. Jason held his father's face with both hands. Dad, I know you're coming back. And when you do, I want you to know the son you'll find isn't that insecure boy anymore, the one who was afraid of disappointing you. He's a man who's learned to fight, who's learned to protect his family, who's learned that true love is proven in hardship. That early morning, Frank Miller nearly woke up 3 times. But he decided to wait until after Jason's conversation with Rebecca. He wanted to see how his son would handle things on his own, to be sure Jason was truly ready to take on his responsibilities. The next morning, Jason arrived at the hospital more determined than Frank had seen him since the beginning of it all. Dad, today's the day, Jason announced. I'm meeting Rebecca in an hour. Eddie already gathered all the evidence, and I'm going to show her we know everything. Jason pulled the chair close to the bed. Dad, if you could give me any sign, anything, to give me strength for this conversation. He paused, staring intently at his father's face. No, forget it. I don't need a sign. I know you're proud of me. I know you're rooting for me. And that's all I need. Jason kissed his father's forehead and left the room. 2 hours later, he returned with Eddie, the company's accountant. Frank could hear the excitement in their voices. Tell him, Eddie, Jason said, moving closer to the bed. Even if he's not consciously hearing us, I believe some part of him is taking it all in. Mr. Frank, the meeting was intense, Eddie began. Jason confronted Rebecca with all the evidence, emails, call logs, even some recordings she didn't know existed. At first, she tried to deny it, Jason continued. Said she was just trying to protect the family, that she wanted to prevent us from losing money on contracts she thought we couldn't fulfill. But when Jason showed her the emails where she deliberately badmouthed the company, especially the call recording where she fabricated financial trouble, she had no way out, Eddie added. Frank was eager to hear how it ended. Dad, then something unexpected happened, Jason said, his voice growing serious. She cried, a lot, and confessed she was doing all this out of envy. Envy? Envy of the relationship you have with me, the company you built, the close-knit family you and Mom created. She said she always felt left out, that she always thought you had more success than she deserved. Jason sat in the chair. That's when I understood, Dad. Rebecca isn't evil. She's hurt. And hurt people sometimes hurt others, trying to heal their own pain. Frank was surprised by his son's wisdom and compassion. I could have humiliated her, threatened to sue, exposed everything to the whole family. But then I remembered something you always said. Revenge may bring momentary satisfaction, but forgiveness brings lasting peace. What did you do? Eddie asked. I offered her a deal. She stops all attempts to harm our company and our family, and in return, I don't expose what she did. But with one condition, she had to help fix the damage. And she agreed. Not only agreed, she volunteered to reach out to the clients she convinced to cancel contracts. She'll tell them she was given wrong information about our company and that we're actually the best choice for their projects. Eddie clapped. Jason, that was brilliant. If she can reverse even a few of those cancellations, the company will come out of this crisis stronger than it went in, Jason added. And the best part, without me having to sell my house, without having to sue anyone, without tearing the family apart. Frank felt immense pride in his son. Jason had found a solution that benefited everyone involved. Dad, there's one more thing, Jason said, his voice growing emotional. Rebecca told me she always admired you, said you were like a father to her after her own dad passed away. And part of the anger she felt was because she was afraid you wouldn't love her anymore if you found out about the wrong things she was doing. Jason held his father's hand. It's funny how people do destructive things trying to protect what they love most, isn't it, Dad? She almost destroyed our family trying to be part of it. That afternoon, as Jason slept in the chair beside the bed, Frank made his final decision. It was time to wake up. Jason had proven he was ready to take on any responsibility, to face any challenge. And more importantly, he'd proven he was a man of character, one who could forgive and find solutions that worked for everyone. Frank slowly opened his eyes. Jason, he whispered. Jason woke immediately and jumped to his feet. Dad, Dad, you're awake. I am, son, and I heard everything. Jason began to cry and threw himself into his father's arms. Dad, I thought you'd never wake up. I thought I wouldn't get the chance to ask for forgiveness for... Forgiveness for what, Jason? For making me the proudest father in the world? Jason pulled back slightly, confused. Dad, I ruined the contracts. I almost bankrupted the company. You didn't ruin anything. You were sabotaged. And even then, you found a way to fix everything with wisdom and compassion. Frank cupped his son's face. Jason, I pretended to be in a coma because I heard you say on the phone that you'd be free once I was gone. I thought you wanted to be rid of me. Jason was stunned. Dad, you heard wrong. You heard. I said I'd be free from the fear of disappointing you, free from the insecurity of not being good enough. I never wanted to be rid of you. I know, son. These past few days I've understood everything. And I've realized something else. That you're not just the son I dreamed of having. You're better than I ever was. Father and son embraced and cried together for a long time. Dad, the company, we'll take care of the company together, not as boss and employee, but as partners, as father and son who respect and trust each other. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. In the days that followed, Frank's recovery was swift. The doctors were amazed by the sudden improvement, but Frank and Jason knew there was nothing sudden about it. It was simply the power of a family facing challenges together. Rebecca kept her word. She reached out to all the clients she had negatively influenced and managed to reverse 2 of the 3 cancelled contracts. What's more, her positive recommendations brought in 2 new clients for the company. "Dad, Rebecca wants to talk to you," Jason said a week after Frank was discharged from the hospital. "She's afraid you won't want to speak to her anymore." "Of course I'll talk to her. She's family, and family forgives, learns, and moves forward together." When Rebecca arrived at the company's office, she was visibly nervous. Frank stood and hugged her before she could say a word. "Uncle Frank, I don't even know where to begin asking for forgiveness," she said, crying. "You don't need to ask for forgiveness, Rebecca. You've already redeemed yourself through your actions. What we need now is to talk about the future." "The future?" Frank looked at Jason, then back at her. "Jason told me about your expertise in administration, your business connections. The company is growing again, and we need competent, trustworthy people." Rebecca's eyes widened. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance to be part of the family in a meaningful way. If you want to, of course." Rebecca cried even harder. "Uncle, after everything I did..." "Precisely because of everything you did," Jason interrupted. "You proved how much damage you can cause when you're on the opposite side. Imagine the good you can do when you're on ours." Rebecca accepted the offer and became responsible for the company's commercial division. Her network and experience helped Miller Construction expand into new markets. 3 months later, the company hadn't just overcome the crisis. It was stronger than ever. Frank and Jason worked in perfect harmony, combining the father's experience with the son's energy and fresh ideas. "Dad, there's something I need to talk to you about," Jason said one afternoon as they reviewed the contracts for the following month. "Go ahead, son." "I didn't sell the apartment." Frank looked at him, curious. "When you woke up and we resolved things with Rebecca, I cancelled the sale, but I want to sell it for another reason." "What reason?" Jason smiled. "I want to buy a bigger house, one where you can live too. These months made me realize I don't want to live far from you anymore." Frank felt his eyes welling up with tears again. "Jason, you have your own life, your girlfriends." "Dad, any girlfriend who doesn't accept that I love my family isn't the right one for me. And besides, who says you can't find a girlfriend too? You're only 55. They both laughed. "All right, son, let's find a house for both of us. But on one condition, it has to be close to the office. I don't want to waste time in traffic that I could be spending with you." 6 months later, father and son were living in a comfortable home just a few blocks from the company. Their routine included breakfast together every morning, lunches at the office when possible, and long conversations every night about work, life, and dreams. One evening, Frank was in the backyard watering the plants when Jason came home from work. "Dad, we got an offer today you won't believe." "Tell me. Remember Morgan's construction company? The one that took 2 contracts from us last year?" "I do." "Well, they're having financial trouble and want to propose a merger. They'd contribute equipment and some specialized staff, and we'd provide capital and management." Frank stopped watering the plants. "What do you think?" "I think it's an interesting opportunity, but I don't want to make this decision alone. It's a huge change for the company." Frank smiled. Just a few months earlier, Jason had felt he needed to prove himself by making all the decisions alone. Now he understood that strength doesn't mean doing everything by yourself, but knowing when to seek advice and support. "Let's review the proposal together. Tomorrow morning we'll call Eddie and Rebecca, go over the numbers, and make the decision as a family." "As a family," Jason repeated, smiling. "I like the sound of that." That night, before bed, Frank reflected on everything that had happened over the past months. The deception that had started with misunderstanding and distrust had turned into the best thing that could have happened to his relationship with Jason. He'd discovered that his son not only loved him deeply, but had also grown into a man of integrity, courage, and wisdom. Jason had learned he didn't need to be perfect to be loved and respected by his father, and together they'd realized that true family isn't about never making mistakes. It's about being present in difficult moments, about forgiving, about growing together, and about building a future based on love and mutual respect. A year later, Miller Construction had become one of the largest construction companies in the region. The merger with Morgan's company had worked out, resulting in an even stronger and more competitive business. Frank, now fully recovered, shared the company presidency with Jason. Rebecca had become a key player in the commercial department and was engaged to one of the company's engineers, a young man she had met during one of their work meetings. "Dad, there's something I never asked you," Jason said one morning as they had coffee together. "What is it? Don't you regret pretending to be in a coma? Wasn't it too much suffering to discover things you could have found out in other ways?" Frank thought for a moment. "You know, son, if I could go back in time, maybe I'd do things differently. But I can't deny that those days taught me more about you than years of normal interaction. And they also taught me about myself." "How so?" "I learned that sometimes we hear what we expect to hear, not what's actually being said. When you said you'd be free when I was gone, I immediately assumed the worst because that was my biggest insecurity, that you felt trapped by me." Jason nodded. "And I learned that I was always afraid of disappointing you because I never really knew if you were proud of me. We spent years living in the same house, working in the same company, but never truly communicating," Frank reflected. "Those days, as painful as they were, forced honesty between us that we might never have achieved otherwise." "That's true. When I thought I was talking to you while you were unconscious, I said things I would have never had the courage to say if I knew you were listening. And me, pretending to be unconscious, had to just listen, without giving advice, without trying to fix everything. Just listen and understand who you really are." The two fell silent for a moment, each lost in thought. "Dad, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Do you ever think about getting married again?" Frank nearly choked on his coffee. "Jason, where did that come from?" "It's just, well, you're still young, you're successful, you have so much love to give, and I don't think Mom would have wanted you to be alone forever." Frank was moved by his son's maturity and generosity. "I don't know, son. Right now, I'm focused on making up for lost time with you, on building our partnership in the company. If someone special comes along, well, we'll see." "And if she does, she'll have to accept that you have a clingy son living in the same house," Jason joked. "Clingy? You?" "Hardly," Frank laughed. "What about you? Thinking of finding a serious girlfriend?" "Actually, Dad, there's a girl I met during the merger with Morgan's company. She's an architect, works in the design department. And we've been going out to talk about work. But lately the conversations have been more about other things than work." Frank smiled. "What's her name?" "Emma. And Dad, she has something I find really important in a woman." "What's that?" "She loves her family as much as I love ours. And when I told her our whole story, from the fake coma to our reconciliation, she cried, said she admired our love for each other. She sounds special." "She is. And Dad, she wants to meet you. Can I bring her over for dinner this weekend?" "Of course, I'll make it a nice meal. She loves lasagna. Then I'll make your mother's special lasagna." That weekend, Emma joined them for dinner. She was a simple, smart, and caring young woman. Frank saw in her eyes the same love Diane had for the family, and in Jason's eyes he saw a happiness he hadn't seen in a long time. "Mr. Frank, Jason told me you pretended to be in a coma to find out if he really loved you," Emma said during dinner. "Yeah, it wasn't my smartest moment," Frank admitted, slightly embarrassed. "I think it was beautiful." Frank and Jason exchanged surprised glances. "Beautiful?" "Yes. It shows how much you love each other. You were so worried about Jason's feelings that you'd rather suffer than confront him directly. And Jason cared so much for you that he was willing to sacrifice everything for your recovery." Emma looked at them both. "You're lucky to have each other. Many people go their whole lives without experiencing such deep family love." From that dinner onward, Emma became a constant presence in the house. Frank grew so fond of her that he began treating her like the daughter he never had. 2 years later, Jason and Emma married in a simple but moving ceremony. Frank was the best man, and during his speech at the reception, he told the whole story of the fake coma, drawing laughter and tears from the guests. "I pretended to be in a coma because I was afraid my son didn't love me," Frank said, looking at Jason and Emma. "And I discovered he loved me more than I ever imagined. Today, seeing him marry this wonderful woman, I understand that love doesn't shrink when it's shared. On the contrary, it multiplies." Jason stood up and hugged his father. "Dad, thank you for pretending to be in a coma." "Why?" "Because if it weren't for that, maybe we'd never have realized how much we truly love each other." The celebration lasted late into the night, and when everyone had left, Frank stood alone in the backyard, gazing at the stars. Jason and Emma had left for their honeymoon, and for the first time in a long while, he was alone at home. But he didn't feel lonely. He felt complete. His relationship with Jason was stronger than ever, the business was thriving, and now he had a daughter-in-law he loved as his own. Looking up at the sky, Frank spoke silently to Diane. "Darling, our boy has become an incredible man. You'd be so proud of him, and I think you'd approve of Emma. She takes care of him the way you took care of us both." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the tree Diane had planted years ago, and Frank smiled. Somehow he felt she was there, giving her blessing. 3 years later, Jason and Emma gave Frank the most special gift of his life: a grandson. Little Ethan Frank was born on a sunny December morning, and when Frank held him for the first time, he cried like a child. "Dad, do you want to be his godfather?" Jason asked. "Godfather? I'm his grandfather." "Yeah, but we want you to be his godfather too. There's no one we trust more to care for him if we ever need it." Frank looked at the baby in his arms and saw endless possibilities in those tiny eyes. "Ethan Frank," he murmured, "you'll grow up in a family that truly loves each other, my grandson. You'll learn that family means being present, forgiving and fighting together for each other's dreams." Emma, still in her hospital bed, smiled. "Mr. Frank, now that you're a grandfather, you need to find a grandmother for Ethan." "Emma!" Jason protested, laughing. "It's true. Every child deserves grandparents who are in love." Frank laughed, but the idea stayed with him. Maybe it really was time to open his heart to love again. Diane always said he had so much love to give, and now with his family growing, he felt there was room for more love in his life. A few months later, at an antique fair he visited every weekend, Frank met Deborah, a 52-year-old widow who was also searching for vintage pieces for her home. She was a retired teacher, had 2 grown children living in other cities, and just like Frank, was learning to rediscover life after a great loss. Their first meeting happened by chance when they both wanted the same item, an antique mirror with an ornate frame. "I saw it first," Deborah said, smiling. "But I got here first," Frank replied, also smiling. "How about we share it? Each of us keeps it for 6 months? Or how about we grab coffee to decide who gets it?" The coffee turned into lunch, the lunch into dinner, and when Frank got home that night, Jason and Emma were waiting for him, curious. "Dad, it's 8 at night. You never stay out this late," Jason said. "I met someone interesting at the flea market." "Someone?" Emma asked with a mischievous grin. "A woman, Deborah, a retired teacher." Jason and Emma exchanged glances and smiled. "What about the mirror? Did you get it?" "Actually, no. We decided we'd look for another one just like it for each of us. And next weekend we're going to another flea market together." "Dad, is this a date?" Jason asked, feigning surprise. "It's a shared activity between 2 people with common interests," Frank replied formally, but couldn't hide his smile. In the following months, Deborah became a constant presence in Frank's life. She adored little Ethan and got along wonderfully with Jason and Emma. She was affectionate without being intrusive, independent without being distant. "Dad, Deborah is amazing," Jason said one night as she helped Emma give Ethan a bath. "She makes you smile in a way I haven't seen since Mom's time. Do you think your mother would approve?" "Dad, Mom always said true love is recognized by the good it brings to people. Deborah is good for you, for us, for Ethan. How could Mom not approve?" 2 years later, Frank and Deborah married in an intimate ceremony with only close family and friends. Ethan, now 2 years old, was the ring bearer and stole the show by trying to eat the rose petals he was supposed to scatter. In his wedding speech, Frank spoke about second chances, about how love can come at any stage of life, and how family is about addition, not replacement. "Deborah isn't replacing anyone in my heart," he said, looking at Jason. "She's expanding my capacity to love. And I want Ethan to grow up knowing there are many forms of family, all equally valid when they're built on love and respect." Deborah, moved, thanked them for welcoming her into such a close-knit family. "Frank, Jason, Emma, Ethan, you've shown me that family isn't just about blood. It's about choosing to be present in each other's lives, every day, in joy and hardship." 5 years after Frank and Deborah's wedding, the family had grown even larger. Jason and Emma had a daughter, Olivia, and Deborah brought her 2 children and 3 grandchildren into the family, who visited regularly. Miller Construction had become one of the largest companies in the region, now run by Frank, Jason, and Rebecca, who had married and also had children. One Sunday afternoon, the whole family gathered in the backyard for Ethan's 7th birthday. Frank looked around and saw 3 generations playing, talking, and laughing together. "What are you thinking about, love?" Deborah asked, walking up to him. "I'm thinking that 10 years ago I pretended to be in a coma because I thought my son didn't love me. And now I look around and see we've built a family where love doesn't need to be proven. It's just lived, every day, in every gesture, every conversation, every moment we choose to be present in each other's lives." Jason walked over to them, carrying Ethan on his shoulders. "What are you talking about?" "About our crazy family," Frank replied. "Crazy why?" "Because it started with a misunderstanding, went through a charade, included a cousin who tried to sabotage the company, and today we're more united than many families who've never faced any hardships." Ethan climbed down from his father's shoulders and ran to his grandfather. "Grandpa, tell the story about when you pretended to be asleep in the hospital." "Again, Ethan, you already know that story by heart." "But I love it. It's the story of how our family learned to truly love each other." Frank picked up his grandson and looked at Jason. "You know, son, you're right. That's exactly what it is. It's the story of how our family learned to truly love each other." And as Frank told the story of the fake coma one more time to Ethan and Olivia, Jason watched his father and realized that this 65-year-old man, surrounded by children, grandchildren, his wife, and extended family, was exactly what he wanted to be when he reached that age. "Dad," Jason said when Frank finished the story. "Yes, son? Thank you for pretending to be in a coma. Why this time?" "Because if it weren't for that, maybe our family would have never learned that true love isn't about never having problems. It's about facing them together and coming out stronger on the other side." Frank hugged his son, and in that embrace was their entire journey together, from misunderstanding to understanding, from fear to love, from separation to unity. Deborah watched the scene with tears in her eyes. When she married Frank, she didn't know she was gaining not just a husband, but an entire family that would teach her about the true nature of unconditional love. Rebecca, now a mother of 2 and a respected partner in the company, approached the group. "Uncle Frank, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Rebecca." "Do you regret pretending to be in a coma?" Frank looked around at his gathered family. Jason and Emma discussing plans for the company, Ethan and Olivia playing with the cousins Deborah had brought into their lives, Deborah setting the dinner table with the care of someone tending to a family she chose to love. "Rebecca, if I could go back in time, I'd do everything exactly the same, because every hard moment we went through brought us here, and here is perfect." That night, after everyone had left and the children were asleep, Frank and Deborah stayed in the backyard talking about the day. "Frank, can I ask you a personal question?" Deborah said. "Of course. Do you think Diane would approve of our family?" Frank smiled and pointed to the tree Diane had planted years before. "See that tree? Diane planted it when Jason was little. Back then it was just a fragile sapling. Now it's a big, strong tree that gives shade to the whole family. And Diane always said family is like that tree. It might start small, it might weather storms, it might have to grow in directions we never planned. But if the roots are strong, If there's real love at its core, it'll grow and bear fruit that feeds generations. Deborah held her husband's hand. As though you think she'd approve. I think she planted that tree knowing one day a big happy family would gather under its shade, and that family would include people she never met, but who'd be part of the same love she helped plant. That night, Frank fell asleep, knowing his life was complete. The son he once thought wanted nothing to do with him had become his best friend and business partner. The cousin who tried to destroy the family had become one of the most important people in his life, and love had multiplied in ways he never imagined possible. Ethan, now 10 years old, often told his friends at school that his grandfather was the smartest man in the world. Why? His friends would ask. Because he pretended to be asleep to find out if my father loved him, and he discovered he was loved more than he ever imagined. So what? So when you find out you're truly loved, you can love even more. And when you love more, more people want to be part of your family. That's why our family is so big and happy. The kids didn't always understand Ethan's philosophy, but Frank, when he heard about this conversation, felt his grandson had grasped the essence of everything they'd lived through. One afternoon, 15 years after the fake Coma episode, Frank was at the company office when Jason walked in with a serious expression. "Dad, we need to talk." Frank looked up from his papers, concerned. "Did something happen?" "No, nothing serious. But it's about the company." Jason sat across from his father's desk. "Dad, you're 70. I'm 43. Isn't it time for you to retire and enjoy life?" Frank laughed. "Jason, I enjoy life working with you. There's no retirement when you love what you do. But Dad, you could travel with Deborah, spend more time with the grandkids, take up hobbies." "Son, my hobby is working with you. My joy is seeing the company grow. My satisfaction is knowing we've built something solid together." Jason sighed. "Dad, you're not understanding. I don't want you to retire because I want to get rid of you. I want you to retire because I want you to enjoy life while you're still healthy." Frank stopped shuffling papers and looked straight at his son. "Jason, are you worried about me?" "Very. You work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. When do you ever relax?" Frank smiled. His son's genuine concern touched him deeply. "All right, son. How about a compromise? I'll cut back to 4 hours a day. Just handle strategic decisions, and you take full charge of daily operations." "That would be great, Dad." "And in my free time, Deborah and I can travel. I can teach Ethan how to fish. I can help Olivia with her homework." "Perfect." Frank stood and hugged his son. "Jason, thank you for worrying about me. Thank you for wanting me to be happy." "Dad, after everything we've been through, after discovering how much we love each other, I want you to have many more years ahead to enjoy our family." That day, Frank realized the circle had closed. 15 years earlier, he'd pretended to be in a coma because he thought his son wanted to get rid of him. Now his son was suggesting he work less because he wanted him around for much longer. The end of the story. And you, dear listener, what did you think of Frank and Jason's journey? Do you believe we sometimes need misunderstandings to uncover deep truths about our relationships? Have you ever been in a situation where you thought someone didn't love you, only to discover you were wrong? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your stories may inspire other listeners going through similar experiences. If this story touched your heart, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more narratives celebrating the transformative power of family love.